Hey there, Adam LoDolce from sexyconfidence.com. Happy holidays. I wanted to create this video with a very different style to it today because I was sitting here drinking from my mug that I drink from every single morning. Yes, there's a picture of my brother and I on this mug. And I was trying to think of myself, I can't believe I just told you that. I was trying to think to myself, what are some holiday tips that I can give my fans for this upcoming holidays? And I was sitting down and I was gonna do some big skit with, a Santa Claus hat and talk about holidaying or going to holiday parties. But honestly, the first thing that came to mind was family. That's just the first association I always have with holidays. And one thing that's always bothered me is, ever since I've gotten the white background and made more professional style videos, I've kind of lost touch with you in some senses. So this is really my way of connecting with you on the holidays. And I really just want to tell you a little bit about myself and 3 lessons that I've learned along the way. It's really 3 moments that have changed my life over the past few years and really how it is that I've gotten to be here today. So the first story I want to tell you about is the story of how I went from being a management consultant to my current profession. Now, for most of you probably don't know, out of college I was actually a management consultant. I was working for a startup software company and I had what was actually considered to be a really cushy, awesome job. I was working probably only about 30 to 35 hours a week. I was making really, really good money, and at my age, I was doing things that most people would really only dream of in the management consulting world. But I just wasn't happy. There's something about my life at the time that just was not fulfilling. Most of it being the fact that it was a startup software company and we really had to kind of stretch the truth in order to sell the software. And that was fine for the first 6 months of that job, but after about 2 years, I just couldn't do it anymore. So, this was one of the moments that changed my life forever, which was the moment that I decided that I was gonna stand up to the CEO of the company and basically tell him to f off. Yes, you heard that right. The last real job that I ever had with a real boss, I actually went out pretty Jerry Maguire style. I told him exactly what I thought of him, and at that moment I decided that I would never go back to that type of life. And the real lesson to be learned in this moment is that if you're not happy with something in your life, whether it's in your relationship that you're in, whether it's in your job that you're in, whether it's where you're living, then simply make a change. And you'd be amazed that the moment you decide to make that change, so many new opportunities present themselves, right? Imagine if I had decided to stick with that company, be a management consultant, I would not be doing what I'm doing today, right? The moment I quit that job, I had to figure out my path forward, and that path eventually turned into Sexy Confidence. The second story I want to tell you is the first time I was hired to give a paid speaking engagement. And I don't know about you, but I was absolutely terrified of public speaking. The thought of getting in front of an entire group and having to present something, nonetheless the fact that it was on dating and relationships, this was all very new to me at the time. This was about 5 years ago. I was hired to give a speech at a high school of over 400 freshmen in high school. So talk about like a really scary audience, you can imagine. So I was hired to go speak there, and I only had a week to prepare the speech. It was like a last minute thing. That was why they were hiring me, of course, a totally inexperienced speaker. The last speaker canceled and they wanted to bring me in. So I said, screw it, I gotta go for it. And I went for it. I got on stage, I gave an hour presentation, and I completely bombed. And I don't mean just like bombing a little bit. I'm telling you, like, I had to go sit in the principal's office that day and talk to the principal about my speech, and he was wondering, what was I thinking? First off, I was wearing like a button-down shirt that went like this far down. I didn't have an undershirt, like totally inappropriate. I was saying things that were wildly inappropriate. They hated it. And that was the first speaking engagement I ever gave. And of course now I'm a paid professional speaker. I've spoken at hundreds of the top universities in the country on dating and relationships. And the key lesson that I want you to take out of that moment in my life, and hopefully you can take something out of this moment and apply it to your life, is that you're gonna fail the first time you try to do anything. And I truly, every single time I try to do something new, I fail at it the first time. And I think that's true for so many people trying new things and trying to really change and improve themselves. The first time they try it, they fail. And the biggest difference between a winner and a loser in life is that a winner is willing to accept that he or she is going to fail 3-4 times until he or she finally succeeds. And the loser is the person who fails once, says, I can't do it, and then they move on. And I'm just thinking to myself, imagine if after that first speech, sitting down across the desk from the principal, I decided I'm never doing this again. Imagine where I might be today. And the third moment that happened in my life that has probably had the biggest impact on my life over the past few years, and probably has impacted your life quite a bit over the past few years, is the moment that I decided to transition from coaching only men to coaching women on dating and relationships. And this happened totally unexpectedly. I never thought that I would be working with women or giving women dating advice. It was just never even a thought in my mind, quite frankly. But this happened. I used to coach men on how to be able to confidently approach women. I used to do it without them having to use like pickup tactics or how to be sleazy, how to do it with confidence in a very real way. And I really enjoyed doing that. I was good at it, and I was very effective at that coaching. But at the same time, going out and doing that every single night was starting to get a little bit old, as you might imagine, right? I had to go out at night every single night and approach women. When I had a girlfriend, it was really challenging because I'd be going out approaching women and having to get phone numbers because I was working with men. And I got to a point where I said, something has to change. And the thing was that this part of the business was growing enormously. I was hired to be an MTV Made coach, helping a shy guy get a girlfriend in under 3 weeks successfully. And I also was featured on CNN.com with one of my videos that I created for men approaching women. But what happened was that video went viral, and so many women were emailing me, messaging me, saying, can you please teach me everything you know about the male mind, everything that you learned when you were coaching men? And it was at that moment that I thought to myself, you know what, it's time for a change, right? Working with women is something I could see myself doing for a very, very long time in my life. It's something that I could see some real future potential for, whereas working with men and teaching them how to approach women was just not something I saw myself doing past the age of 26. So the hardest part about this change in my life and this moment in my life is that my coaching for men was actually very successful at the time. And I realized that if I was going to make this transition, I was going to have to really sacrifice quite a bit in order to make that happen. And I did make that happen, and I did sacrifice that first year. I really stopped coaching men, and I really sacrificed a lot of not only financial gain, but also just happiness, because I was literally working at my desk for an entire year rather than doing all the fun stuff that went into coaching men. And my lesson to you out of this moment in my life is that sometimes in order to be happy in the future, or in order to be really fulfilled, sometimes you have to sacrifice short-term gratification or short-term gains, right? Maybe it's a guy that you're dating in your life, to bring this to dating, but maybe it's a guy in your life that doesn't have long-term potential, but you're still seeing him because it feels good in the short term, right? Or maybe it's a job that you have right now that you're not happy with and you want to change, but you're kind of still sticking with it. Sometimes you're just going to have to sacrifice and really take 2 steps backwards, and then it takes 3 steps forward, right? And that's what happened to me with Sexy Confidence. And now, of course, I'm so happy that I did it. So now that you've heard a little bit about me and some of these key moments that have really transformed my own life, I'd love to hear from you and some of the moments that have been really transformational for you, whether it's in dating, relationships, with your health, whatever it is. I'd love to hear about it. I'd love to get to know you a little bit better. So please just leave those comments right there below. And after you leave that comment, I actually have a little bit of a favor to ask of you. In the upcoming year, I'd like to really start interacting with you a lot more, and I'd like to hear from you some of the questions that you might have about your dating life, or about men, or about relationships. So I've created a quick little survey. I'll leave a link right here. You'll see a link right here. And I asked, it's going to literally take you 1 minute, maybe even 30 seconds to fill this thing in. And it's just going to ask you a few questions that are going to really help me create great content to help you in the new year. So thank you so much for watching, and happy holidays. I'll speak to you next week. Bye-bye.